Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Questioning Everything. Thank you all so much for tuning in live tonight. We are on episode 71, Empty Cities and White Heavens. So, they told you the camera doesn't lie. That was the first lie. Because the first war America saw was not a war. It was a wagon, a glass plate, a man dragging a corpse 40 yards, and a caption that turned an infantry grunt into a rebel sharpshooter dying in the nest. Then they did the same thing to the sky, and then they did the same thing to the cities. If you can move the dead, paint out the heavens, and glue a crowd onto an empty street, you don't have a photograph. You have a reset document. You have a picture of the world after they decided what you were allowed to remember. That is what we'll be talking about tonight for episode 71. And welcome back, everyone. Some of the top comments from yesterday's episode, or Tuesday's episode, if you remember last time, we were in the bathrooms, palaces with 2,000 rooms, and almost no toilets, fountains for gods, but pots for people. That was the body of yesterday. And tonight, we will talk about the picture of the body. But some of the last episode's top comments before we jump into it. Fifth DMT says you don't build like that, then turn around and dump your poo out the side of it. And that's exactly right. That's the whole episode in one sentence. You don't cut stone like that and then invent a chamber pot as the plan. You don't have thousands of rooms, beautiful, ornate ceilings, beautiful, ornate details, and then you just go wherever you please. Andrew Boyle says, angels built these palaces, and angels don't need to use the restroom. That's I very kind of strongly am more leaning towards that. At least maybe not necessarily angels, but that's definitely a clean version of the same idea. Whatever used those rooms at the start did not live like we do. Then somebody moved in. Who did? And then the retrofitting started. Bradley Johnson, 8297, you said, I believe each reset we get thrown back to horse and buggy time. People who have no clue these palaces were machines. We've been living in ruins. That is a great comment, Bradley. That's why tonight's photos matter. After the break, they don't just hand you a horse, they hand you an album that says the ruins were always there and always yours. All right, so let's jump right into it tonight, then, here, folks. Like I said, last episode, we talked about the palaces with 9,000 rooms, 2,000 rooms, almost no bathrooms for any of them. And tonight, we're going to be looking at some of the photographic evidence because once they bury a first floor, they still have a problem, the photographs. The prints, the proof hanging in the gallery that says this is not how it always looked. So they didn't just raise the streets, they retouched the record. Tonight is altered photos from the past, the staged Civil War, whited out skies, objects cut out, people painted into massive cities so those cities wouldn't look empty and abandoned. And I'm going to say this up front because this is the show. The long exposure excuse is the cover story. Yes, plates were slow. Yes, blue skies blew out. They wrote that in the manuals. And then they used those manuals as a license to delete whatever was in the sky and invert whoever was on the sidewalk. If last episode was where did they go to the bathroom, tonight is who decided what the photograph was allowed to show. So the photography in the 1860s is not your phone. It's chemistry and theater, they say. Wet plates, glass, a traveling darkroom the size of a small wagon. You coat the plate, you shoot, you develop before it dries. You are not freezing a charge. You are not catching a cannonball in the air. You are setting up a scene and hoping nobody blinks. Matthew Brady gets the credit, father of photojournalism. His name on the gallery, his name on the plates, Brady's eyes were already going. He sent other men like Gardner, O'Sullivan, Gibson, a whole crew. Brady stamped photography by Brady on work he did not actually take. That's not a conspiracy theory. That was his whole business model. The Civil War is the first American war the public consumes in pictures. Let me get a few Civil War photos going here for you, folks. Okay. Oh, not the right slide I wanted to start with. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. That's the one I wanted. Perfect. Okay. So the Civil War is the first American war the public consumes in pictures. Before that, you got engravings, paintings, letters. Now, you walk into Brady's New York gallery in 1862, and they hang the dead of Anthem on the wall. The Times writes that Brady has done something like laying the bodies in your doorway. That's power. That's the new priesthood. Whoever owns the negative owns the memory. And the negative is not sacred. The negative is a product. So in the Civil War photos, none of them were actually taken of the battles. What? Yes, exactly right. The product is the staged Civil War photos. So when you start looking through these photos, and I just went around the last couple days right on loc.gov, they have thousands of Civil War photos. What you will not actually find is any photos of the actual battles themselves, despite each regiment having a battlefield photographer along with them. They claimed that they have no actual photos of the battles themselves. And what you see is just a really pristine and clean, crisp telling of the Civil War, right? You see ruins like this. This is in Charleston, South Carolina, I believe. It is said to have all been done by cannon. Look how old this structure looks, for one. This church, it looks very old, very weathered, and it looks like it's been abandoned for quite some time. You have, looks like, new saplings growing right out here where, this used to be a paved in courtyard. And it just looks like thousands of years of ruin, right? And here you have some more staging of photos from the Civil War, just people standing around piles of mud. All of these buildings that are in ruin look very old and weathered, and again, all said to be done by cannonballs and small arm mortars. But what you see is just a bunch of muddy grounds, muddy ruins, like a post reset scene. And that is what I believe. Personally, the Civil War is not at all anything like they taught us in the history books. I believe it was a battle between factions of these ruling elites, these parasites, because it's not been one large group, and it's even now today not one large group. There's fragments and segments and different, you know, sections working for or against each other. And I believe the Civil War was, right after the reset, kind of a battle for lands, a battle for tech. and destroying all these ruins and painting a narrative that it was a battle that caused it. Because this is all supposed to be, I mean, the American Civil War, it's less than 100 years after the founding of America, right? And what you see here is just old, weathered ruins, people just standing around and posing. And the soldiers you're going to see in a lot of these photos. Again, this is, mid 1800s. And they say one of the reasons you never see people in the city streets is because of long exposure. But here you have a Civil War parade in Washington, D.C. that completely debunks that narrative. You have a large group of soldiers on horseback and marching on foot that you see pretty clearly with very little blur at all. Yet, when we look at empty streets like this, it says, oh, there's people here. It's just long exposure. This is some of the ruins in the south of the Civil War. We'll just kind of be looking through them. I mean, look how just old, weathered, and abandoned all of it looks. This looks almost very like fake and painted on compared to the rest of the buildings too. And where I got all of these Civil War photos, for those wondering, just go to the Library of Congress.gov, LOC.gov, and they have a great Civil War collection there. There's thousands and thousands of photos. This is just me kind of pulling maybe 100 or so for the show. So all these battlefield photographers catching, groups of people posing around, standing in muddy ruins and streets, but absolutely um, no battles, no actual battles taking place, and all of the photos whited out and altered skies. And I'll show you in a couple of them. You zoom in closely, you'll see some very clear photo manipulations and photo edits, as you see in so many of these pictures. It's like you can see right here the difference in the sky around the tree and the bleached out sky behind it. Hey, thank you very much. Yes, Michael, this is the link. LOC.gov pictures collection Civil War. And then just go view all and you can just go next and next. But this is supposed to be America's bloodiest battle, one of the highest casualties, brother versus brother, just, sheer carnage, sheer hell. And they don't have any pictures of the actual battles taking place, but you have tons of posed and staged photos of men that look like they've never seen a day in combat, much like you see in those aftermath photos of the Great Fires, just well dressed people, not a spot of dirt or soot on them, just standing around and posing and looking like they're having a great time, not fighting America's bloodiest battle, right? I mean, look at this guy just sitting here, perfectly clean, pressed suit, and posing like a pinup model right in front of the ruins of, I believe this is Charlestown. But if you look closer at these photos, you can see just where they do a really bad job of trimming out the sky. Like this is pure white, and this has a whole different shade where they cut it around this like looks like a ship mast or a light pole or something. But you'll see that in so many of these photos. Just and this is all supposed to be done by Canon, you know? You see it looks just like a great fire. The rubble's stone and rubble. You'll see trees perfectly fine in some of these photos. People just standing around buildings that are in complete ruin. Photos of people posing on horses, and the horse looks completely clean. I mean, even look at the feet of the horse. Hasn't been trampling around in bloody, muddy battlefields. It looks like it just rolled off of the stage. Here is some of the posed bodies, and this was a common practice during the Civil War. People were asked to just essentially lie down. One of the famous photographers that we talked about a little bit, Gardner, published the 1866 in his photographic sketchbook of the war. He writes like a novelist to his last thoughts of home. And then essentially, they had many instances of these Gardner photos that were staged, like these corpse scenes. And look at the sky difference right here. You see something clearly in the background, almost looks like buildings in the background. Really weird, like after image, like overlays of what looks like, supposed to be battle damage, but it looks just very odd. This is supposed to be from, just cannons and mortars, essentially. You see no fire damage, trees perfectly fine, bricks, buildings in total rubble, just like this here. And it looks so ancient, doesn't it? I mean, look at this church. This is another view of that church we showed earlier. It just looks completely abandoned. Yes, Kathy, Lincoln was the president during the Civil War. Absolutely. Absolutely correct. And it's crazy to think that we had photos during the time of Lincoln. That's another view of that church I showed you earlier. I mean, you can even see if you look at the close up of the towers, you can see how there's like a weird difference in color and contrast from the sky. I don't know if you can see it that well here, but you can see where they just cut out all around this building and whited out the sky intentionally. That's not long exposure. They had this long exposure time figured out way before the Civil War, but they kept using it as a narrative to explain so much of these empty and abandoned scenes from like the Civil War and other major cities at the time. Let me show you, jumping from the Civil War real quick, a video from St. Petersburg. This was in 1861, a panorama of St. Petersburg from the Tower of Admiralty. And just look, this for one, this was around the same period as the Civil War. So you've seen in the Civil War battalions of troops marching with no problem, no issue with long exposure there. But now we switch over to this panorama, and there's no sound here. Let me make it full screen. And look at how the streets look. There's not a single soul in sight. Look how massive those streets are in St. Petersburg. It's all just empty, muddy, abandoned streets. The war was essentially a full destruction of our true history, removal of the old world Bibles, artifacts, technology, books, and right. Absolutely right, Samuel. It's what a lot of these major wars were. Yeah, and not a single speck of dirt on any of those beautiful, clean uniforms. Look at this whole panorama, though. Not a single horse cart, not a single person, nothing. The more you look, the creepier it is. And at the time, St. Petersburg had a population well over a half a million. You should be seeing tons of people. You should be seeing, some kind of market stalls, some kind of parked horse carts or something. And again, the blame for both the empty street here and the whited out skies is long exposure time. You can see the boats. That's about the only thing you see that shows any sign of life in this very creepy panorama. It just looks like abandoned ruins, muddy, overgrown streets. It's like this is the first inventory of the area, them taking a big, large panorama of the area after the reset, kind of getting it ready to fill back in with the populace, getting the stories and the narratives in place. Exactly, plastic. They took pictures before they brought the people back. Yes, kind of getting an inventory of the lands, all the Freemasonry. Just keep kind of scrolling through here. This one's almost done. It's just a very, very creepy scene. The longer you look, the like more you zoom in on it. I have another panorama picture of San Francisco in 1877. I'll show you here in a little bit as well. So, getting away from the whited out skies, going back to the Civil War here, a couple of the known staged photos during the Civil War was this famous rebel sharpshooter photo done by that same gentleman we talked about at the beginning. Stage planted, either fake bodied or somebody told to lay down there, or he moved the body outright. There were no actual rebel sharpshooters at the time. And another common instance with these cases is they were soldiers posed as Confederates and posed as both Union. The uniforms were so all over the place and kind of hard to tell whose side was whose. Here's another close up. And this one, this is a really famous one. So, Grant at City Point, the great General Ulysses S. Grant, on the horse in front of the Great War behind him, in front of his men, is not actually Grant himself. This was actually General Alexander McCook. They swapped out Grant to pose in front of this photo, with this being the original photo of General Alexander McCook. Take a look at this again. So, this is what the photo was based on. They cut out the head of McCook and put in General Ulysses S. Grant right here. Same horse, same pose, same position of the saber. And this was admitted at the time. For whatever reason, they decided they needed to fake Grant by doing that. Um, Another photo that they faked commonly was Lincoln. Lincoln was in a lot of Civil War photos. Here, he was switched with John C. Calhoun's body, the man who built a theology of slavery, Lincoln's face grafted onto that stance. A heroic print, but the mole is on the wrong side of his face here. And it sat in collections for about 100 years before anyone said anything about it. And again, you had the great General Ulysses S. Grant at City Point, a horse and body from another general, right here. Decades after the war, still manufacturing the scene. And because the market wanted a father and grandfather version of Glory, the Library of Congress finally catches it in 2007. Okay, let me see, get to a couple more of these photos here for you guys on the Civil War. So, the Civil War in the official story is the furnace that forges the modern United States. One nation, one narrative, one sets of saints. If the pictures that taught that story are props and graphs, then the furnace is also a studio. I'm not telling you no one died in the Civil War. I'm not telling you it didn't happen. I'm telling you the movie of the death was a shot on a lot. They staged all of the Civil War shots. Let's go back to some of these Civil War shots so you can see some more obvious staging. Like a very popular photo you'll see in a lot of this collection is groups of men, battalions of troops posing in front of tents, and it all looks like a poor backdrop from like a high school or a school photo. And once you see it, it's very easy, but it's very hard not to. Sorry, my little daughter's screaming in the background. Look at this very old and weathered building. And look at this particular symbol right here. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Looks like a castle, too. This was an aftermath of the Civil War. Here's some more of it. Just look at how old and weathered these ruins look. It looks like there's tons of overgrowth there. There's, again, no signs of fire or scorching. It looks just like all these great fire shots from whether it's, um, the Great Fire of Chicago, the Great Fire of San Francisco. They all look the exact same as these Civil War shots. These were long abandoned ruins that we inheritors founded after the last reset. And these photos are of them taking inventory of that. And you can see the editing of the sky. Always look at the towers and stuff. Look at the towers and the details on the trees. You can see the discoloring in the trees and the sky. Another clear sign that the photos have been altered and edited. Just kind of keep going through some of these stage photos. I mean, you're supposed to be in the trenches with these big, giant cannons, lifting up these massive cannonballs. And again, bloodiest war in America's history. And yeah, the scaffolding up on that tower. Yeah, absolutely, Samuel. I was just thinking about that. Let's go back to that. Same people that built all these ruins, they said, are rebuilding it after the supposed Civil War with these rickety little scaffoldings. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Almost as much sense as hammer and chisel. But I mean, just look at all these soldiers posing. Beautiful, pristine, clean uniforms, like they just got there day one, and they're standing in muddy trenches. There's no dirt or soot on any of these people's boots, nothing. They look very, very clean for being in a bloody battlefield. And look at them standing around. These cannonballs look very clearly edited in afterwards. Look at all these ruins, but still perfectly stacked, uniformed cannonballs. And you have just well dressed people standing around. You can see the cut edging of all of these angles, these people right here, all across the buildings, just cutting out and whiting out the sky. Probably because what did this was from above in the air. It wasn't cannons. It wasn't rudimentary, crude artillery. That's all they said to have. I mean, look at these fake looking cannons stacked over here, just in a big pile of mess. Yet, big fake stacks of cannonballs all in a row like that. They look like they were just cut and pasted right into the photo, don't they? And this is supposed to be a medical scene from removing wounded from the battlefield after the Civil War. And just look how posed it looks. It looks like models staging a scene, like staging a narrative. It's supposed to be an injured person. Where's any of the blood? Where's any of the dirt? Where's like his fingernails look clean. There is not a speck of dirt on any one of these soldiers. Everyone's trying not to look at the camera, trying to make it look natural. Those two people failing miserably at it. This guy looks like he has some terrible looking head wrap on it, just standing there, legs crossed, looking at the camera. Everybody try not to look at the camera. Impossible edition here. That guy's looking at the camera. Nobody. Oh, this guy's supposed to be dead, but he's looking like he's a centerfold in a Playboy magazine. Not a drop of mud or torn or any type of raggedy clothing on any one of them. Looks absolutely ridiculous. Yes, it does, King. We have laser mounted weapons on aircraft now. The next reset is knocking on the door. Yeah, paint your roofs blue, honestly. Maybe that's why my house was blue or spared from the big giant tornado we had because my house was blue. Yeah, this is a full shot of this. Look at all these people trying not to look at the camera. Even this guy that's getting pulled into the car. Up, looking at the camera. He's looking at the camera. He's looking at the camera. They're all just kind of trying to not make it look obvious. Look at these supposed, I don't know, dead or injured soldiers, like, again, completely clean uniforms, no dirt on any of their shoes or boots. This guy's getting wheeled in. He's looks like he's just having a good time here. I mean, this is supposed to be again America's bloodiest battlefield, and they don't have time to take any of the photos from the actual battle, just after shots. Yeah, you see some of the shadows too. This is supposed to be, fresh devastation from the Civil War, but it looks like it's ruins that have been there decades, hundreds of years. Look at all those that overgrowth here starting to show. And just the weathering from all of these ruins. Like, it's not just weathered, but the ruins are weathered, if that makes sense. No blood in any of it. Absolutely, Glenn. It's like all these photos are like PG-13 safe photos. It's another one of that same. Again, this looks, I could tell you this is a great fire shot or a scene from Dresden. And you guys wouldn't be able to tell the two. These are supposed to be from cannonballs and cheap or primitive artillery, like first generation artillery barrages. Nothing like the artillery from like World War II type stuff, but no, this is just cannons and muskets that did all of these ruins. This light pole doesn't look like it has nothing has any scorching on it though. It's supposed to have burned to the ground. No scorching. Everybody just looks pretty clean, well dressed. Ancient ruins is what these are. Look at that overgrowth right here. Look at that. That doesn't happen from just a battle that happened a couple weeks ago, right? No, this is scenes from, decades of overgrowth and just nature retaking over. It's supposed to be, just like those great fires, those directed energy weapon attacks as we see. Trees still standing, everything else brick ruins. Look how fake that building looks here. I showed you this photo earlier. All of these buildings look very fake. Like these shutters kind of look fake. Nobody's anywhere to be seen. This little weird staging area, perfect, pristine fence with a bunch of like weird stone rubble. And this is Charleston again. Look at that. Trees perfectly fine. Everything else is in ruin. What was the name of the city and the people's bodies turned to glass? The city was decimated by an explosion. Was that in the Civil War? I'm not sure exactly. I didn't hear that one particularly from the Civil War. Nice white socks. Yeah, exactly, King. You see some of them with white socks, even. Not walking around a battlefield for long with white socks. And just look at this. This is supposed to be from cannons. Look at the little like holes that look like they were put in after the image. Some of them don't even kind of line up with the building. Like right here, they're just kind of hanging off to the side a little bit. And you can see that like artificial layer from where they cut the sky out right here, especially when you zoom in. It's just a clear, really bad cropping job. Anytime you want to see proof of the altered skies, folks, just zoom in on those towers and those little details like that are really kind of obviously hard for them to cut out. And they never thought people like us would look back at all of this detail here, but it's quite obvious when you zoom in on any of these photos. We had a worldwide reset, and these are the survivors. This will be us soon. Yeah, Ferret, I hope not soon, but yeah, this is exactly it. This is the aftermath of the reset. These are the survivors of that reset. All of these cannonballs look very fake. Look at this. Like some of them look bent, like bent and like not round, like an actual cannonball would be. like a solid forged metal cannonball would be. You can see like little imperfect indentations in some of them. These look like they're just completely fake here. It's like kid looks like he's 8 years old and he's just standing around, not a care in the world. They're just leaning back, having a good time. These soldiers, again, look pretty clean for the ruins they're standing in. Everyone is in suits. Nobody's in actual uniforms. All these little like fake cannonballs littering the ground. People just standing around here. This is all supposed to be done by cannonballs, folks. That's just such a silly narrative. It doesn't make sense at all. That's exactly it, Thomas. That's why do they white out the skies? It's because of what was flying in the skies: airships, other flying vehicles, perhaps, and even some odd atmospheric anomalies that weren't present in our time. Um, Airships were one of the big reasons why I think these were carpet bombings. These weren't cannonballs. These weren't primitive artillery barrages. It really is, Samuel. Once you open your eyes and you know what to look for, it's so easy to see the editing on most of these old photos. It's in literal black and white right there for you to see. Most of us will just never even see these photos, never even individually, like independently seek out these photos to look at ourselves, right? They made history so bland and boring and dull in school that nobody wants to look at it, let alone look at it after school. But most of them will just see this photo at face value, never zoom into all the details like you and I do here. Just look at them all posing for, like, these are supposed to be people in the middle of the bloodiest battle in America's history. And you just see nothing that would give you that indication. Hey, thank you very much, Donald, for the super chat. I was wondering, the President of the United States is going to admit the history books are obviously fabricated with all the overwhelming evidence. Do I think the president? Not this current administration. No, not at least. And I mean, mostly all of the presidents, I'd say, since JFK have been very much controlled and just figureheads. They actually, have very little power. But no, I don't think any president or administration is going to admit that the game is a lie. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Just looking through a couple of your questions here as well, guys. Thanks again for that super chat, though, Donald. I appreciate that. I wish the president would. I had high hopes for this administration, even though I don't have any hopes in politics anymore. But this administration was a complete joke, one of the worst we've had in history so far. So why are there almost no real battle photos of the Civil War? They say the plates were too slow, but that's very, very convenient. Um, when you see all these motion shots like the parade and all of that from the Civil War, there's almost no photograph of the Civil War as fighting, aftermath camps, portraits, bodies after the fact. A few plates around Charleston that might show ships firing. That's the exception. So the war you think you saw is the war that they had time to perfectly arrange. Think about what that means. For every other historical photograph from the same century, World's Fairs, palaces, instant cities, grand avenues, if the most important American conflict of the 1800s is already a production, the rest of the 1800s is not a family album, it's a press kit. Brady goes broke, and the government eventually buys all of his plates. The state inherits the memory and alters it to whatever suits their narrative. As they say, history goes to the victor, and history is written by the victors. When the winners own the negatives, the reset has a face. What if there was no Civil War, just a culling of sorts? I think the Civil War isn't at all cake like they tell us in school. There was battle, there was loss, People's family does have, histories of, their great grandparents fighting in these wars, but most soldiers are never told what they're actually going to war for, right? They're always told a different reason than it actually is. Rarely do they ever get the truth from their leaders, the ones that give the orders. So I think it was a race after the last reset to get to all of these old world ruins, refound these cities and, be the founders of these cities, gain power through, territorial control. The parasitic elite never operates as one unified, uniformed unit. They might do more so now than they did right after the reset, but I believe there was many sects of, these groups. Like I said, they were fractured and divided, and they kind of raced off to gather up any ruins and any, trinkets, artifacts, any technologies of the old world that they could gather up for themselves. And what we see from these Civil War photos are the battle for for the power. It was a power grab. I mean, look at in these stage photos were after the fact. Like, look at these like all of these tent photos, like the background looks completely fake. Looks like either like one of those pull down um, backdrops that you have at school photos or something along those lines. And all of these soldiers look completely clean pressed. Every one of them are smiling. How many soldiers do you actually see in real combat zones smiling and so cheerful and so clean and well dressed? And no unified uniforms between them. Every one of these pictures have mismatched different uniforms. It doesn't matter if it's the South or the North. There's so many stage photos, and stage photos of groups of men in uniforms like this. Notice the hand in the breast pocket again, just like you see commonly with Napoleon. This was a, Freemason battalion running to get all of that free masonry after the reset, right? Everyone with a brain will see that a big cannonball that weighs 200 pounds can't. Exactly. No matter how big it is, could be a whole ton. Some of the cannons were really huge, by the way, too. Another great example to look at signs of altered photos. If there's no big buildings nearby, look at the trees. Trees always give it away. You see that discoloring, how it's uniformed across the forest line, different color from the whited out skies, and you can see the close up trees. They all have that artificial element, like it was just cut in, you know, a cruel version of Photoshop. Photoshop, AI, all that technology has been in the hands of the controllers, the elites, for a lot longer than we've had access to. You could just see the artificialness in this photo, just people posing around a stage set. Another very fake looking backdrop. Look at those faded trees and that. It looks just like something out of a one of those Sears photos that you take when in the 90s, if you guys remember that. Look at all these people like posing very femininely, for one. Everyone looks very clean, well dressed, not any speck of mud or dirt on any of their shoes, no torn pant legs or anything. Think of all these thousands of soldiers running through the brush, running through the thicks in these forests. None of them show it. They're just camped out. Like, they look cleaner than they do when I was in Boy Scout camp. You know what I mean? You have a week-long Boy Scout camp and you wouldn't look this clean and pressed in photos like this. Fair, he says, When the next reset happens, if I live, I'm going to be in the history books. I'll own it all." There you go. I mean, it's, power, the rush for power, the rush to rewrite the history books. Those with the most power were the ones that wrote the version of history, the very sanitized and altered version of history that we know today, right? Okay, this is another one. I just love these posing. Hey, everybody, I know you guys are in the middle of a very, very bloody battle, But do you think you can all just gather around this tent real quick, sit around and pose and smile and show off how fun the Civil War is? Like, show me one speck of dirt on any of these guys' clothes. It'd be one thing, like, if you look at 1 or 2 photos and you take that conclusion away, but I've been looking at hundreds, thousands of these photos, and they're all the same. It's just all a big staged scene. You can take so many variant photos. You can be in these Civil War camps. You can take photos of all these troops posing in front of tents, but you can't take any pictures of the battle itself. Make it make sense. Look at these fake cannons. I mean, just everything in this looks fake. You can see right here the discoloring between what looks like that wagon wheel in the sky and that cutting all around that tree line. And granted, a whole troop of soldiers here. Nobody's band-aid, bandaged. Nobody's wearing discolored, ripped, dirtied uniforms. Everybody just looks like they just got back from the laundromat, don't they? I just love looking at all these Civil War photos because, I mean, the more and more you look, the more silly the narrative is. I mean, it just looks like it's a high school photo, like a senior photo more than a Civil War photo. And they were supposed to be in the trenches and the battlefields for weeks, months at a time. And even the American flag looks like it just came back from the laundromat. Their tents are white as can be, right? And the backdrop, it just looks like a completely fake backdrop, like a Kmart, family portrait backdrop. All of this. Here's another one. This is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, 1864. For one, trees, dead giveaway. You can see the alterings, the discoloring of all the branches from the sky, or the main block of sky. Every one of these people have completely clean uniforms on. They're just standing around posing. Again, beautifully clean, pressed, not even muddy. I thought there was mud on this guy. I think it's just like one of those little spurs. All of these look completely staged. No, it's hundreds of thousands dead, but let's just pose in front of a random stairway real quick, folks. Look at that beautiful church. You can see the altered lines right there if you zoom in closer on that. And same with the trees. Trees look very altered there. Yeah, very, very posed. Here's another one. Not anything of dirt on any of these. The same fake backdrop, blurry, kind of out of focus background. There's another guy with his hand in his breast pocket, another guy with his hand in his breast pocket. Must be a battalion of Freemasons there, right? Maybe they were just very tidy then. Yeah, they had traveling photographers that didn't take any actual photos of the battle. And maybe they had traveling like laundromats as well, just kind of always wanted to make sure they were really sharply dressed and ready to pose for the photos that they weren't going to actually take during the important parts. Look at that rickety scaffolding again. Same people that built this did not build these scaffoldings, and these ruins look like ancient Rome. Like if you look at Rome being dug out, it looks just like it, does it not? All right, a little bit more here. So you see these pictures, you know the ones, a street of impossible buildings, towers that look like they took a civilization, not a decade, and above it, a sheet, milk, nothing. Bleached white, whited out skies goes by many different names. They tell you the plate couldn't hold the sky. Blue light was hard for the cameras at the time. Overexposure, solarization, so the sky prints as a black. Then they tell you what they do about it is they paint the sky black on the negative so it prints white. And then they block it with paper ink, graphite, and cyanide to draw cloud shapes by hand. That's why you see some of the pictures back then with clouds on them. They're hand drawn clouds. And so then what they would do is they would keep a stack of sky negatives in the studio and they would be numbered and reusable. This is the official process to tell you how they, deliberately alter the skies. They say it's because of long exposure, even though we see that's not really the case. They can capture a cloud in the sky, no problem, if they can capture a whole battalion of marching troops. So you wipe the sky to a white field, and anything that was in the sky is gone. Then you may leave it blank. You may drop a polite set of clouds, or you just may even put in an airship or two and say, oh, look at these, experimental aircraft that were in the sky for a little bit of time, but we have tons of pictures of them. This community has been staring at these plate negatives for years now. Shapes, holes, lines that don't read as weather, masked that don't match the street, clear digital alteration, things that look like they don't belong to a world of horses and chimneys and hammer and chisels. They call those airships. They call them old world craft. They call them the technology that was not supposed to exist after the break. They had airships in the sky a lot earlier than they tell us. And that is one of the main reasons they alter the skies from the past. That is why they have the blank white canvases in so many of these photos. And then when you don't have the altered skies, you see these. Sorry, I'm just waiting for that to load up. You see these, dozens of these photos all over the world. Airships traveling, massive airships. These were just the ones they let us see in history. They were around a lot longer. The infrastructure was there for a lot longer. We've talked about in previous episodes, mooring stations on top of old skyscrapers, mooring stations built right on top of boats, mooring stations built anywhere, mooring station lighthouses that were mooring stations. These airships could travel anywhere. They had many diverse uses. And bombing, carpet bombing was one of them. I believe they were absolutely used for war. That's one of the reasons why they got rid of them, not just the Hindenburg, but because the Allies, like the British, even America, they feared the German airships. The German airships were long or well past anything that the Allied nations had. And it took a moratorium on helium. America had the largest supply of helium, and they straight up blocked Germany from getting any of it. And they had to switch to hydrogen, which we seen that result. I mean, you just look at like the cutaways of these mooring stations. Look how intricate they were. Look how advanced they were for the age. Early 1900s, they say. They had this type of capabilities. Magnetic couplers that would just kind of clip on from the end of the airship, locking that airship into place into these mooring stations. Then you would have a little compartment that would just lower, and people would walk right out from the front of the airship, from the front underside. I mean, that is a big reason why airships are a big reason why all of these photos from the past had whited out skies. It wasn't just airships, but definitely, and especially in those Civil War photos, because you've seen some of the battle aftermath of those cities. Those cities were not destroyed by cannonballs. They were destroyed by carpet bombings. I mean, just look at this. Look at the ruins of this. And again, you have perfectly cleared streets, stone and brick and rubble. You have light poles and stuff perfectly fine, though. It's just looks like Hiroshima, just looks like all the Great Fire photos. The same exact things. Then staged Civil War photos, right? Everybody's just standing around, posing, having a good time. You can see how these people are all cut into this photo or cut around these people to white out that sky. Look at this fake backdrop, perfectly clean uniforms, right? So common in all of these. Long exposure does not require you to keep a library of fake negatives. That's not chemistry, that's editing. That's the same instinct as moving corpses and posing them for shots like they did in the Civil War shots that I showed you, or swapping out people altogether like Lincoln. If there was a grid in the air, if there were ships, towers of a different kind, a sky that was busy, the photograph is the last place they'd leave it. You don't argue with the cloud, you paint it, you don't debate an airship, you white it out. And then you sell the prints as limitations of the process. Now, let's move on to another one of my favorite alterings, editings of our past, the empty and abandoned cities. So this is a 1877 glass or panoramic panorama, sorry, of San Francisco. And what you're going to see here is a completely empty scene. First of all, how beautiful and how detailed these photos were from a time when cameras were so primitive, they say. But I guarantee you can not zoom into any of these photo details on your phones like you can on some of these old photos without any like pixelization or anything like all of our photos have now. Look at this. All this rubble right here, abandoned rubble in a muddy street, nobody around at all. Oh, look, two people here. We found two people in the panorama. So, again, there goes your long exposure time, unless they just told two people to hold really, really, really still. Other than that, what you'll see is a very odd scene, not a city that's rebuilt right after the Great Fire, because this was right before, or right after, sorry, the Great Fire and the Great Earthquake of San Francisco that pretty much burned it all to the ground. This was like, I believe, a decade or so after that. Very beautiful progress, right? You don't see any scaffoldings from any of the new construction, anything like that. You just see empty, abandoned streets. Might find a horse cart here or there, but for a city this size, look at this. To see such empty streets when you zoom in on this. One horse cart in the middle of the daytime on a big major street of San Francisco. Where are all the people at? The old world was way more advanced than we are now. That you are absolutely right there. Yes, indeed. Just look at the quality of these photos. You don't see any signs of life though. No chimneys going. I mean, granted, it's California. It's not going to have too much chimneys, but just no people standing around idly on the street corners. You know, you can see it. You've seen one or two of them in this photo so far. But for such large city streets, for such massive structures all around here, San Francisco, again, like that St. Petersburg photo, says over 500,000 people that supposedly lived here. Where are they all? Anywhere you look, you see barely any signs of people. Just empty, abandoned, muddy streets with a bunch of like piles of like rubble and wooden boards around here, not actual construction sites. It looks like they're just cleaning up the city, getting it ready for the inheritors to move in. Look at that. Very, very odd, is it not? Here's some more of these empty streets of major cities in the old world. Um, Sorry, give me just a second. Wait for that to pull up here. keep your questions coming too here. What I don't get to tonight, folks, we will definitely pick up tomorrow during Open Lines Friday. So make sure if you guys have any questions you want to ask about any previous episodes, tonight's episode, Tuesday's episode, Open Line Friday, tomorrow is your place to do it. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow pulling up these photos. Okay, it's gonna work now. We're gonna have to wait. All right, I'll wait. While I wait, I'll just keep talking here. So early photographs of Paris, London, San Francisco, Glasgow, St. Petersburg, you see all the same. These giant finished cities look abandoned, like plague stricken. That's their world. A British photographer in the 1850s said when faster plates arrived, views would no longer seem plague stricken by deserted streets. They want you to hear the people that walk. So they fixed the problem for abandoned street shots with quick plates, they say, in the 1850s. But these photos that I'm showing you are long past 1850s, and still they have the same abandoned streets. Maybe if I can pull this photo up, sorry. By my computer. Here is Paris, like in, I believe, 1866. Ah, sorry. My computer's being really slow. Awkward. Hey, Donald, thanks again for that super chat. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. There should be hundreds of parked horses and wagons. You are absolutely right there, and yet you see maybe a dozen in that whole panorama in that San Francisco panorama. I'll post that panorama on like my Discord and my Telegram so you guys can zoom in. It's a really, great high detailed one. It's like a couple hundred megabytes, but it really gives it's the best detailed one I found. All right, come on. Load. Nope, this wasn't the one I wanted to load either though. Dang it. I'm sorry, folks. Having some technical issues here with my old computer. Here we go. All right. So this is Paris. Literally, like I said, 1866, completely abandoned. This is Torino, Italy, 1857 to 1888 shots, various shots of the city. All of them you see completely zero signs of life. No horse buggy, no street vendors, no carts, nothing. Empty staged scenes. Like these were just taken inventory. Maybe a weapon that scrambles brains, sort of like giving everyone autism. Ah, that could be. This is from St. Petersburg. There's some Russia shots as well. This was in, I believe, this shot was Glasgow. Big, massive structure, muddy streets all around it, zero people. This is St. Petersburg, Russia again. Some more Russia here. Just look at that. Just completely empty streets. No horse and buggy or carts slowly walking through the bridges, just completely empty and abandoned. This one I really like. This is a photo of the cathedral in St. Petersburg, and it looks like they straight up fired the greenskeeper when you zoom in. First of all, these people look like they were painted in. They look very fake. This was an 1873 photo, by the way. But look at when you zoom in on this photo. You see all this overgrowth shrubbery literally right up to the steps of this cathedral. This is not how you see it. A big giant cathedral like this with, overgrowth and weeds right up to the steps. You zoom in here and it looks like you got some broken windows even. This looks like a structure that sat abandoned for decades, allowing Mother Nature to do what Mother Nature does best: reclaim what spots we erased of it. Mother Nature will always find a way to grow. William, you said, damn, maybe I'm just new to your channel. Where are the people? What happened to the past population? What did the recent reset do? Well, the reset, I believe, wiped out a massive portion of the population. I believe it's a reoccurring theme that happens every few hundred years. And what happened to the people are the ones that, came up after the reset, whether they were lucky survivors or hiding out in some kind of bunkers, like all the underground cities, all the underground tunnels that we find, the ancient tunnels and underground cities. King, hey, thank you so much for that donation. Really, really appreciate you, King. Thank you very, very much for that. And then what you see here is just, complete ruins being, you know, rediscovered, refounded after a reset. And here's what it looks like when the shrubbery isn't completely overgrowing. Again, muddy, abandoned, and empty streets, right? A few shots from that panorama as well. This is in Moscow, I believe. Doesn't matter where it is, though, all is the same: empty, muddy, abandoned streets, no signs of life anywhere. That is definitely not long exposure that we're seeing there, folks. Definitely not. You have one, they leave the streets dead and they blame the exposure, the long exposure time. The mega structure sits there like a leftover from a people who are gone. That's the photo that makes your stomach drop. At least it does for me. That's the one that looks like a mud flood city. After the water dropped, after the water receded, and before they filled the first floor, when the emptiness is too loud, you add the people back. Painters had been doing it for centuries, adding in photos or adding in people into these photos painted. And I've showed you a few of those before. Let me see if I have any of them to show you as well tonight. I thought I had them in my stuff. I guess I don't see them here. I'll try and come back to them. I'll go to some more of these stage photos of the Civil War while we finish up the episode. Look at them all posed and well dressed. It's so funny. So, a packed commercial street, what should be a packed commercial street, is completely empty. There's tons of photos I showed you of the cameras at the time that can indeed capture the crowds in such massive cities. We've seen it with that parade photo from the Civil War collection that I have here. If a city of that size were truly full, the ceremonial shots would be full too. If a city of those sizes were truly filled to the population capacities that they give us for the time, you should be seeing tons of some type of activity in the streets. You shouldn't see empty, muddy streets all over. Skies and crowds are the big edits. The small ones are how you know it's a habit. Objects removed, a tower that doesn't match, a device on a roof, a figure in a window, a line in the sky that isn't weather. You don't need Photoshop. You scratch the negative, you paint it out, you print from a sandwich, you recopy the copy until the original is just an altered rumor. And then you can tell whatever story you want to from these, right? Once that is normal, every historical figure is a suspect. We cannot trust any of these photos from the past. You might not see signs of altering in all of them, but damn near enough to establish a pattern, right? I mean, just zooming in on this one, what do you have? Clear signs of altering right here. Look at that. And again, if this was just one or two examples, sure. Just a weird photo glitch from the past, whatever, but hundreds and thousands of photos. I encourage you guys to do this exercise yourself. Go to simple digital archive sites like the Library of Congress, loc.gov. I like to use New York Public Library, it has a great digital archive. And just start scrolling through the photos from this time period. And you will find, once you know what to look for, the altered edits or the signs like red flags everywhere. I mean, just look at that. I love this photo. This is one of the photos that kind of try and add in cannonballs to make you really sell that cannonballs did all of this. Just put in some piles of cannonballs, make them, make the viewer really sold on the idea that cannonballs did all of this destruction. S- More photos posed of the Civil War. Look at that gentleman with his hand right in his chest, like that. All these people just standing around posing real pretty for the camera. Oh, look at that. Got a little bit of hand and chest action. Love it. It's like little Easter egg hunts, right? These were literally just photos I pulled tonight and yesterday while getting ready for the show. I haven't even really looked at them too closely myself. Look, they just did a really bad job there. They just cut the whole skyline out. This sailboat in the background's halfway cut off. Just oops. Just a little too eager on that photo edit. Look at those trees and stuff. It looks like this whole backdrop was just kind of placed right in the background here. The ship that they did halfway cut out looks painted. Looks very like weirdly detailed compared to the rest of that person looks like he was added on to. Muddy ruins with people posing around. The fake people standing in front of these cannons. Little fake cannonball pile right here. Look at that. Even then, they got a couple guys with their shirts off, but even then, those guys look perfectly clean. Pure white shirts, perfectly clean, no stains, no nothing, and they're just supposedly standing around in the mud there. Okay. Exit stage right. It's a big giant stage studio. These cheap cannons, these little cannonballs. Look at this beautiful building. Built by hammer and chisel, horse and buggy, no doubt, right? And these were just ruins after effects. I wonder how far down this building actually went. And you than any actual dirty soldiers in any of them. All right, let's look at some of your guys' comments for tonight, and then we'll wrap up the show and talk about tomorrow's episode. Hey, I have an awesome community here. These are people that care about each other, and it makes me proud to be a part of. Yes, I do, William. And, this is you guys are one of the best communities out there. And, just, I don't say mudflood, Tartary community, whatever you want to call it, truth seeking community. We have grown a lot in the last few years, folks. Don't be blackpilled. Don't be discouraged. Don't think that, we don't make a difference out there. You guys make far more of a difference than me just being one voice. It's you guys showing up, helping to spread the message, helping to spread, like, share, and subscribing to these podcast episodes, getting the word out there to more and more people. You guys make far more of a difference than any one content creator can. And you guys are a great community. I can't thank you enough for just how awesome you have been. How generous you guys are too. I mean, just kind of generosity that was shown to me and my family, especially during the tornadoes that we had not too long ago. They You guys showed me so much love, so much love. I just could not believe how awesome you guys are for that. All right. It took me a bit, but once I caught your sarcasm and how you say it, deadpan has. Yes, that is my mannerism. I say I have way too much sarcasm. Just ask my wife, and I have a very deadpan what method of what you see on these lives. I don't put on a character. I don't put on a fake persona for my internet personality. I am exactly who you see me every day, every week, showing up to these shows. That's my personality. It's my raw, unfiltered, unscripted personality, folks. Keep up the good narration and research. Thank you, thank you. I will never stop. There's so much to expose, so much to chat about. We have an unending amount of things to question, right, folks? Just with the Civil War alone, could go on and on and on about it forever. Let me show you a few more altered photos here before we wrap up the night. This one is one of the more famous ones you guys have seen, them building the Empire State Building. They built that in less than a year's time, right? And we've all seen this photo of them just all sitting having lunch right out on the skyline. This photo is admittedly faked and staged. They don't talk about it much. Look it up on Google and you'll see. I don't know the exact details off the top of my head, but I threw this in here for one that they admit that they faked the photos. So much of the photos, if you look back on them, they'll admit somewhere that they're fake or altered for some way, shape, or form. There's only one reason for such a wide scale effort to manipulate photos, even the ones they admit to being fake. It's because they are crafting a narrative, not showing a narrative, not teaching history organically through the lenses of those capturing it. They are showing you a very sanitized, at best, version of history, and more realistically, a completely altered version of history. One of my favorite versions. This is a photo of them supposedly building the Transcontinental Railroad. And tell me, what kind of railroad do you know looks like this? This looks like a dug out railroad because that's exactly what it is. Another example of them digging out from a previous civilization that already laid the groundwork in the infrastructure, the railway systems and the highway systems. We just dug them up and refurbished them and reused them. But in this photo, you can see again clear altered skies. Look at the different coloring between the top sky and the sky in the trees. They just cut the trees, they just cut out the trees and the sky right along my mouse line. And this is another famous one. This is from the World's Fair in Omaha, Nebraska. I bet most of you guys didn't even know Omaha had a World's Fair, but this was the Trans Mississippi International Exposition that was in 1898 in Omaha, Nebraska. And if you ask me if there's anything left there now, there's not. It's just a big empty field. There's a little plaque where the fair used to be, but nothing like this. This was all built temporary, they say, built in less than 2 years' time, torn down in 6 months after that. But look at the clear sky alterations around those flags. You can just see they did a very, very poor job of just cutting along these flagpoles. Very obvious way to find altered skies. And again, looking in those towers and masses, you can see always just that cutting out look all along these buildings to give you that whited out sky, that blank, empty city that these beautiful buildings are dropped in. I believe this is a university of maybe Nebraska. Don't quote me on that. Just built in the middle of an empty, muddy field. Nobody around it. Big, massive buildings. I always like these stage photos of the construction of the Washington Monument as well. See the old, very old foundation it was built on top of. See these little rickety shacks that are supposed to be the people that are building this, right? And these little tiny cranes or towers on top of it. You can see how that's all altered too. People here, they look like they are actually painted in. They don't really look quite real. A lot of the photos, when you see the Washington Monument too, built like halfway up like this, you see looking like some kind of scorching towards the top. So officially, they say the reason why it stopped and halfway was because of the Civil War, even though during the Civil War, they were still building the dome on top of the US Capitol. I did a previous video on that if you guys haven't seen it not too long ago. But they say they stopped the Washington Monument's construction because of the Civil War, and then they continued on afterwards, and that's why if you look at the Washington Monument, there's two different colors. It's like a lighter color after this part. That's because they said this is a different set of stone and it was left to sit for like a decade during the Civil War. Another one with that weird black scorching. It's like they just kind of are refurbishing this tower, right? Look at that. Very altered. This guy looks very painted in as well. And all that tree skyline as well. You can see where they kind of just different coloring, different white color from the top of the skies. This one is a very awesome example of altered photos. So this is the Wayne County building, the courthouse building in Detroit, Michigan, right? Right after construction, I believe early 1900s. Don't quote me, but look right here on the right. Don't even have to look hard. They just cut whatever buildings and structures were right here, probably all over there. They just cut that right out. The skyline, you can see very clearly different color from the actual whited skies. And they just cut off this top of the building here. Empty and muddy relative streets, just a few people standing around a massive, beautiful palace-like courthouse, right? And let's see. Got a couple more here for you guys. Yeah, this is in New York, I believe. Yeah. But yep, this is a cathedral in New York City. But zoom in closer here, look at the towers and look at around like the cross right here, the like kind of little carved out areas of this building. You could see the discoloring from the sky above and this building. Hundreds and thousands of examples are out there. When I first started doing this, there was only a few examples of the whited out skies, the bleached out skies, whatever you want to call it. It's amazing how many I've discovered since doing this, how many everyone else has discovered as well. It really paints a undisputed pattern that they have altered so much of our history. You can't trust any photo, you can't trust any date, you can't trust any textbook. That is the big part of this channel. Question everything because everything has been clearly manipulated. We don't know how much. We don't know the full reason why. We have very strong ideas as to why that is, right? Covering up great technologies of our past, covering up the resets, covering up civilizations like Tartaria. But I don't even think that begins to paint the full picture here of what we're seeing and why they went to so much lengths to gaslight us. And, it's what they've been doing, gaslighting us about all of this history. Anytime you see that, oh no, that's not a altered photo. That's just the long exposure time. Look at them. They just cut right around these people. There's people's legs right here. Literally, these are people's legs that they just cut. Like long exposure time is responsible for the skies, but they captured the people's legs, right? Very, very hilarious. Here's another one. Beautiful old world remnant structure in Cincinnati. They just can't cut out the trees right. Fall must be very difficult. Fall photos must be very difficult. And this is a supposed construction photo of the Chicago World's Fair. And you can see these people are absolutely drawn in. Absolutely drawn in right here. It's supposed to be a real photo of construction. This part looks real. This part is absolutely people being drawn in. Why? Why would you need to do that? It makes no sense to me. Okay, let's kind of wrap it up here tonight. So, Vanilla Skies for Miles, absolutely one more quarter. So, for tomorrow's episode, again, that's going to be our Open Line Fridays episode. And if you guys are new here to the channel, what that means is anything you guys want to talk about, Friday is the night to do it. You can talk about the last couple episodes we had this week. You can talk about anything, either things we've covered or things we haven't covered. Uh, the Friday episodes are for you guys. If you want to talk and call into the show and talk to yours truly one on one, that's a great time to do it as well. All you have to do is join our Discord. There's the link right there. And just say you want to call into the show on Friday, and we'll get you on the show and you can chat about whatever you want to. You can talk about history, you can talk about sports, whatever. It is your show to do what you please with on Fridays. Okay, so that's pretty much what I have for you guys as well. We got the Civil War, we got just the whole entire time period, mid 1800s, early 1900s. Tons of altered, whited out skies everywhere you look. The old world didn't vanish, only under mud it vanished. Under retouching varnish, under India, under the ink on a sky, under a crowd that was never on that corner. They moved, sorry, that'll choke my throat. So we will see you guys tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m. Central Time, live, where we will continue to question everything. I hope you guys have a great evening, and thanks for everyone tuning in live. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Nephilim Hunter. Thank you, Michael. Great admin team. Everyone that helps be a part of the show. Really appreciate all the back end work you guys do for the program. Keep those eyes open, folks, and always keep questioning everything. See you tomorrow. Have a great night.